We have signal. Signal confirmed. Verifying. Decrypting. It's the History Homos podcast. Scott, William, and Patrick cutting through all the slop and trash. Informational snow crash. Go back. Go back. MK Ultra, go in.
And we're live. Welcome back to the show this week. Joining me, as always, Patrick, and also joining us, very, very special return guest this week. Welcome back to the show, author and super sleuth, Cory Hughes.
Hello. Where's your British co-host?
He is on semi-retirement now. Listen, his handler pulled him out, basically, so he's no longer has to slum with us, so he's only here once a month, but he'll be back again. But Cory, before we start, I do want to this has been bugging me since the last time you appeared on the show. Last time you were on the show, we did a 2-hour long rebuttal of the what's that guy's name, Sean something, I can't remember the name, that really ugly That ugly guy looks like Divine, the female impersonator, who did the Oswald Acts Alone video, if you recall. Yes. It was a good episode, and it's available on our. This is a quick little plug for our Substack. If you want to go check that out, it's currently on our Substack to view, and it's very good. But in that episode, near the beginning, you went on this epic tear. Like an epic rant almost, about how you were like, Zionism is the source of all wars and all this stuff like that. And I was just like looking at the clock and knowing that William had to go to sleep soon. And I was like, yeah, I agree. We got to get onto the fucking JFK shit. And it's been bugging me for almost 6-9 months ago. That occurred. And I just wanted to formally apologize on behalf of me and the History Homos podcast for knocking you down in the middle of that epic Zionism is the source of all the world's woes rants that you were doing.
Yes. Feel free to pick up wherever you left off.
Yeah.
Wherever.
I mean, that is a formal invitation.
You see, like, so my thing is, like, of course, Israel and the Jews are behind everything that's ever fucking been wrong with this goddamn world. And so I don't even harp on that too much anymore because it's a given. It's the foundation. Once people start to come around to 9/11 and what happened to Kennedy, it's like, oh, I get it now. That eventually leads them to Hitler and World War II and all that stuff, which is where I spend a lot of my time. But I'm far more fascinated with the tradecraft aspect
Yeah.
of Kennedy, because that's what everyone ignores. That's where the dual Oswalds come from. That's where, you know, that's where everything comes from in regards to, like, David Ferry was in Dallas. No one else has put him in Dallas, but that motherfucker
Yep.
was in Dallas, easily provable. And but the testimony of FBI agent Regis Kennedy puts him in fucking New Orleans in court with Carlos Marcello, and his other alibi witnesses are like Marcello's lawyer, G. Ray Gill,
Right.
Alice
Very trustworthy
Guidros.
guys.
Right, very trustworthy people, but people just buy it that he was in court that morning. He wasn't, and that was an act of tradecraft. He then will go to the allegedly the Winterland ice rink after the assassination to go ice skating. He never
With
did
young
that.
boys.
With young boys. Yep, he didn't do that either. That was another alibi
I just want to
story.
put the fine point on this. I do sort of respect the idea that David Ferry was like, I couldn't have been killing the president. I was on a date with two young boys at the time.
Well, the story is on the 22nd, he went on this road trip from New Orleans through a thunderstorm to get to Houston, where they arrive at 3 or 4 in the morning. And that never happened. David Ferry never went to Houston. David Ferry was in Dallas, where he was involved with the assassination of the president, and he was involved with the shooting of J.D. Tippit. And he then flees to Hammond, Louisiana, where he's put in Hammond, Louisiana by a guy named Frank J. Chalona, who is a roommate to a guy named Thomas Compton, who was a guy providing an alibi and shelter for David Ferry in Hammond. He goes into their dorm room and he sees David Ferry. He describes him to a T with he said he had hair pasted to the rim of his hat. Right. It's David Ferry, of course. Right. He slept in his clothes with his shoes.
There's pretty much only one guy in that describes for the most part.
Right. Every time you see a description of a guy with real heavy eyebrows, you're talking about David Ferry, and that pops up behind the book depository after the grassy knoll, right? And so you have this very straight line of David Ferry being on the grassy knoll, and then behind the book depository, and then going to the Tippit shooting, and then fleeing to a house in Fort Worth where he swapped vehicles, and then went to Hammond, Louisiana, right? And so this is a very easy to prove and logical chain of events that lead to this conclusion. But the fact that that was covered up, that's tradecraft, that's CIA stuff, that's spycraft, right? And so even if it's after the fact in the cover-up, and that's what I prefer to spend my time on, the micro details, because the micro details are what sink the entire story, and everyone just kind of brushes over them, you know?
Yeah. It really is amazing what they are able to do. There's that famous quote that you bring attention to in your book about how CIA agents, they can transform a person in costume or disguise to the point where they can trick a mother of the child, which comes heavily into play, of course, with the two Oswalds sort of theory that
if they can't trick the mother, they'll replace her with a woman who is not asking questions.
Well, that quote came from Bill Boxley, who worked for the CIA before working for Jim Garrison. And if I'm not mistaken, Jim Garrison wasn't fully aware of his CIA connections at the time.
Sure.
But so some people think Garrison was just infiltrated from day one because of that, because of Bill Boxley's connection. But that's a very true thing they said about the body doubles. And I kind of have come to conclude that there is a nationwide network of people and real estate that is involved in sheltering these people. Sure. A book came out recently called I Know a Woman, by Mary Haversmith, I think her name is, or something like that.
Patrick, take that down.
And she talks about June Cobb, who's a very famous female CIA spy, and that there was a woman named Jerry Cobb, and that these two women basically swapped lives. And so that's a part of this book. And so it goes to show that it's not isolated to Kennedy. It was a wide-scale practice of intelligence.
To that end, if you recall, I'm sure you know all about this, obviously, but in the Valerie Plame revelations in the wake of 9/11, of course, she sort of blew the whistle on the fact that the FBI was very much trailing the they were hijackers, but the terrorists responsible for blowing up the World Trade, or knocking down the World Trade Center, and they were literally monitoring their houses in like 5-6 different locations, and then they just, oh shit, they got away from us again, boys. And then at the end of that, all that, obviously what happened. But the other thing was that the other secret about that, of course, was the fact that the urban moving systems guys were also living just next door to all of these hijackers, going on that whole time. And then and the FBI was very much aware of it too, which is just crazy. So it's really the same thing that we're talking about here.
Right. And let me ask you this. Do you really think they were just calling random addresses out of the newspaper to rent houses for terrorists?
No, of course. That's exactly what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, they got it's a real estate network of safe houses, period. And this pops up all throughout Oswald's life. A great example.
An interesting little piece of trivia. Oh, I got one more little piece of trivia though. So one of the places that the hijackers had rented, just to your point there, was, I can't remember the name of the guy. Damn me for that. But it was a guy who was some Saudi national, of course. And he was also notably the landlord on the what's that fucking cult with the Nikes? Patrick, what's the name of the cult with the Nikes? The Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate.
He was the landlord of the Heaven's Gate house where they had all killed themselves.
Stop.
It was the same guy. He was the landlord for both of these things. It's amazing.
It's so funny.
This is clearly a real estate network.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
So like Oswald, when he's growing up, in 1945, he allegedly attended the Benbrook Common School for kindergarten, and then Margarite Oswald transfers him to Covington, Louisiana, and there is an address on the change of address form. It's 4936 Collinwood. They won't move into, and that's in 1945. They don't move into that Collinwood address until 1956. So 11 years before they actually moved into that address, she used that address for a change of address form in 1945. Right. That doesn't make any sense because that address is never referenced anywhere else ever until they move in 56.
Until 10 years later, yeah.
Right. That pops up a bunch of times. 2220 Thomas Place. Allegedly, Margarite Oswald lived there 3 separate times over a 10-year period with 2 different landlords. So same thing pops up over and over and over again, you know.
Are these real places, or are they possibly just like a mail drop or something?
Well, you would think that, but no, there was a real places where I came into problems with addresses, and this is a major point that this is what they're hiding in the Oswald files. This is Margarite Oswald was somehow recruited into intelligence in the Navy in 1941. Well, there's a file on her
She was in the Navy?
Yes.
Okay.
Nobody else acknowledges this. This isn't official anything. This is an obvious conclusion that I drew because basically in 1941, there is a House Unaffairs American Committee file on her that goes back to 1941. It has something to do with New Jersey and it involves Nazis. And that file later ended up in an Office of Security file held by the CIA. That file, along with a 900-something page file held by Office of Naval Intelligence, are indicated in other naval intelligence documents, but no one ever talks about these and they're not like on the withheld list, right? So you have a lot of files like that are withheld, but they're not going to be lumped in with Kennedy. They'll probably be hidden somewhere else, right? But the point I'm making here is in 1941 and 42, she lives at 1010 Bartholomew. She leaves there in October, and after that, we don't know where she is till mid-44. So she basically has 2 addresses, 227 2136 Broadway and 227 Atlantic Avenue. Those are listed as Algiers address, Algiers, Louisiana. And at that time, the Margarite Oswald, who we know as Margarite, testified that she was a phone operator for the Navy in Algiers. Okay. So here's the problem with all this story. The problem is, number one, if you were a phone operator for the Navy and a woman in 1941 or 1942, you were part of what was called the WAVES program. So everybody got sent off to the war, and they had a shortage of civilian position people here in America. So they created the WAVES program, which would train women to do things like answer the phone and all that, and do the phone operator stuff. And then I realized that if you were a phone operator in the Navy in 1941 or 2, you went through the WAVES program, which mandatory means that you went to one of 2 training facilities, one in either Iowa or in the Bronx. And where the hell was Margarite? Where do I suspect Margarite was living at that time? In New York, because those 2 addresses do not check out in Algiers, Louisiana. They went and interviewed people at those addresses. One of them didn't exist. I think 227 Algiers existed, 2136 Broadway did not exist. So they went and interviewed people surrounding them, and nobody knew Margarite Oswald, meaning she didn't live there at these addresses that she said. But anyone who's ever spent any time in New York whatsoever knows that Broadway and Atlantic Avenue are very popular and known streets in New York City. So I started researching those addresses, and sure enough, The first address she lived at, 2136 Broadway, was right up the road from the Waves training facility in the Bronx. And the other address was in Staten Island. So she gets up to 2136, which is the Belvedere Hotel. She stays there 3 weeks, and then she gets a place at 227 Algiers in Staten Island. At the exact same time, Oswald's aunt and uncle, Hattie Oswald, who was married to Mr. James Coker, they're living 2 or 3 blocks from the Brooklyn Navy Yard in New York, which is right up the road from 227 Atlantic Avenue. So there might be a connection between the Oswald family in New York. James Coker would go on to be like the Assistant Secretary of Agriculture. He was a huge, big name, and he was married. He was married into the Oswald family. He ran the agricultural stock exchange during the 40s, during the war. And then he moves in 44 to Washington, D.C. So you have a lot of stuff going on in New York at this time, and nobody acknowledges that Marguerite was ever in New York. I'm saying it loud and clear. This bitch was in New York. Okay. So this is all tradecraft again. This is them hiding her history, right? All the stuff that she allegedly did down in Louisiana at the time, involving like the Bethlehem orphanage and putting Oswald in the orphanage. That was all done by Lillian Moret, who was her sister. I have no doubts whatsoever that Lillian forged Marguerite's name on a bunch of documents back then. And then this all goes to like, why? Because they were trying to cover up the fact that she was in the Navy, right? This is where everything begins. And this is why the most important document you'll never see in your life is the 986-page Office of Naval Intelligence file on Margarite Oswald. We're never going to get it because it'll just prove everything I just said to you. And so they can't have it get out that Oswald's entire family, including his aunt, his uncle, cousins, were all involved in intelligence. Dorothea Moret, who was Oswald's cousin, the daughter of Lillian Moret, she was accused in 1955 of being one of the most wanted defectors to the Soviet Union. And this was published in newspapers and stuff. And this was published, and then the article was retracted, but you can still get copies of it today. And basically, because in 1954, she got a passport. And then by 1955, she's traveling all over Europe, to China, to Russia, to Poland, to all these Eastern Bloc countries. And
what do you think that is? People don't just do that for fun.
No, not at all. And she went under a couple different covers. One was of a airline stewardess, but then she told people at the time she was a ticketing agent, so she has conflicting stories on what she was actually doing during that time. Then she ended up being like a teacher in China or some weird shit like that. And the weird thing is, between the time she got her passport and between the time that they did all this stuff, I find records of Lillian Moret and Dorothea Moret flying to Kindley Air Force Base in Bermuda for 6 days in September 1954. Why? I also find a travel record of Lillian Moret traveling to Cuba in 1955, and then in 1955 also traveling to Canada, and then she had a Social Security action in Texas when she was always living in Louisiana. So there's way more to the Moret family, who is Margarite Oswald's sister, than anyone's talking about. She was clearly in on the duplicate Oswald scheme. So, yeah, and we only have one known picture of her, but I found another. And to me, it's absolutely clear that this is a family that's been involved in intelligence since who the hell knows when.
Sure. And then also, I mean, like, leaving all that aside, if you're trying to tell me that you're doing switchboard work for the Navy, obviously you're going to end up hearing sensitive information. You're going to have clearance of some kind. You got it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because there's a video on YouTube on the Waves program made in like the 50s that you can go watch, and it talks about that. It talks about, if you want to be in the Waves program, you need to learn to keep a secret. Shh. Yeah. And then it shows like them on the phone lines, because important people say important things, and you need to know what not to pay attention to and stuff like that. And I'm like, holy shit. So basically, just in admitting that she was a phone operator for the Navy, she admitted she had clearance. She admitted all this stuff without even knowing it, because it's not possible to not have that stuff and be a phone operator.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Patrick, you were just about to say?
In your PowerPoint, Cory, there was this, just one mention of, I think Lee had a crypto level clearance.
Right. So that brings us to so we have some problems with Oswald in the Marines.
Many, because there's more than one of them.
Right.
Both of the Marines. So
what you're talking about is the Martin Shrand incident when Shrand was murdered. So Oswald gets to Atsugi, Japan, And there's problems from the jump because they send the two Oswalds to Japan at different times on different boats.
The Oswalds go to Japan.
Right. And so there is a time, though, when Oswald is supposed to leave on a boat for Formosa, which is Taiwan.
Yeah.
And he shoots himself in the arm
to get out of it.
And he's in the hospital through, through the middle of the following month. So it would have been October 27th to November 16th. He was in the hospital. He gets out, and 4 days later, he's on a different boat to go to
it's the other guy.
Right, it's the other one. So this causes problems with Martin Shrand because, and I'll get to the crypto clearance here in a second. When they went to Formosa, what they were doing when Shrand was murdered was a lot of people think that Oswald was guarding U-2 planes, and that's false. He never had anything to do with U-2. He didn't have access to U-2. They might have seen coming and going. But he had no access to any of that stuff, right? And so what was going on that they were guarding, and it turns out they were guarding what was called the crypto van. And the crypto van held like encryption stuff that was used in radar.
It brings Jews on rides through the woods in Poland.
And so the problem is Oswald's not a radar operator. Everyone thinks he's a radar operator, but he's not. There's not a single witness who can put him at a radar station ever, because to be a radar operator, you had to do a 30-week course. He did a 6-week course, and that 6-week course.
There's like engineering involved in that, isn't there?
I don't really know what's involved in being a radar operator, but he actually was a plotting board operator, which is there's a clear board with lines on it, latitude and longitude, and they would call things out and he would mark it on the board. That's the closest he ever got to a radar unit. And we know that because of his sergeant out in Atsugi was Joseph Gajewski, who testified to that or provided a statement, at least to the Warren Commission. And so the crypto clearance thing was, here's the big problem.
I think that guy might have had crypto clearance, if you get my drift.
Weisberg, he believed that Oswald had crypto clearance because of the circumstances of them guarding the van. But here's the problem. It is alleged that Oswald was not doing anything with the unit that at that time. He was actually in trouble, because he's always in trouble. He was in trouble the entire time he was in the Marines. And so he was actually on mess duty. He was serving slop in the food hall. But here's the biggest problem with that whole case. So I'll tell you what happened to Martin Shrand. Martin Shrand is in a group of 6 guys with Oswald going back to Jacksonville, Florida. At the end of Jacksonville, he's paired with 5 other guys, and these 6 guys travel to Biloxi, Mississippi, where they go through the radar school there. So after that, these 6 guys are still together until they get to Japan. 2 of them stayed in America. 4 of them went to Japan. Martin Shrand, Daniel Powers, a guy named Brereton. And so Daniel Powers, he gets murdered in 1967, by the way. He committed suicide, shot himself in the right temple, but the gun was found in his left hand. And so Powers is dead in 1967, but Powers, his testimony to the Warren Commission is all kinds of jacked up because they changed the course that Oswald was supposed to take when he gets to Biloxi, but that's kind of a whole nother story. Ultimately, what happens is you have Powers and you have Oswald and you have Shrand and Brereton, and they're in Formosa, which is Taiwan. And so Shrand shoots himself, allegedly. The official story is that he shot himself with his duty weapon, and it was an accident. The conclusion they drew was that he was doing like flipping the gun and stuff like that, and the shotgun fell out of his hand, hit the ground, and then it shot him under the left arm and basically blew out his whole chest cavity. And so the problem is, when you go through the documents, you'll see that the barrel of the tip of the gun was 8 inches from under his arm, which means that even if the rifle fell on the ground, it would not have created the wound that he got. And then also what I found in that autopsy report is they kept referring to the shotgun blast, which are multiple pellets. They kept referring it to the missile. They kept referring to the missile penetrated the heart. The missile penetrated,
making it seem like it's a single bullet as opposed to a bird
exactly.
shot.
Exactly. And so when you really dig into Oswald and his alleged activities other than radar unit stuff, you'll find he actually was put on guard duty a lot, and he actually got in trouble on guard duty a couple times. And when you're on guard duty, you're issued not only the shotgun, you're issued a 45. And so nowhere in the Shrand documents do they mention the 45 at all, period. It's like doesn't even exist. And the biggest problem with the Shrand incident is that After Shrand is shot, one of the other people in the unit who found the body goes running into the mess hall, or like where all the Marines were just sitting around, and he says, and I quote, "Come quick, a sentry just shot somebody."
Interesting.
Not a sentry was shot, but a sentry just shot somebody. So they all go running out, and there's power. I mean, there's Shrand, and he's taken to the hospital. And this entire thing, Brereton, who was one of the 6 guys, he starts to spread a rumor that Oswald was directly involved in this shooting. Right. And so they investigate that, but guess what's missing from the investigation? Any mention of where Oswald was that night, any statements from Oswald.
He's a ghost.
He's a ghost. And then what turns out 4 months later, Shrand's brother, Raymond, who's in the Navy, allegedly falls off the boat and dies 4 months later.
He was asking too many questions, perhaps.
Well, turns out, thanks to Jack Swike's book, The Missing Chapter, he clarifies that the brother Martin Shrand and his brother Raymond both happened to be stationed at the Philippines at the same time, coincidentally.
So he was a witness, or at least had heard hearsay.
Well, something along those lines. And he leaves, and it was within a couple days of him leaving that Martin Shrand is shot to death.
Interesting.
And then he falls off the boat, and they don't find his body for like a couple days. And so within 4 months, both of these guys who were both in Formosa at the same time as Oswald are dead, right? And so Shrand, what I believe really happened was he was not murdered by Oswald, because if these guys found out about the dual Oswald scheme, and which is a real possibility, because there is some overlap in Taiwan at the end of December. So you have this issue there at the end of December where there's possibly some overlap where people could have been where one Oswald was before they moved to where the other Oswald was. But the idea that these 2 guys are dead within a couple months and both having been at the same place where one of the Oswalds was tells me that they got way too close and the whole thing got covered up. And so the problem is, Oswald, was he on guard duty that night? And if so, then yes, he had to have crypto clearance. Was he in the mess hall? Possibly. We're not really sure. They haven't really clarified this. Do you think we're getting any documents on Martin Shrand?
Obviously not.
Obviously not, right? So how long have we been waiting? I've been waiting all fucking day for these documents. They're going to give us a bunch of reprints. I'm telling you, we're not getting anything new.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it's Trump, first of all. It's Zion Dawn. We're not getting shit from this dude.
So I don't understand what's going on with Trump, not to veer off the conversation, but when you look at the amount of Jews in his administration, is next to none. Just like the last
they're all Shabbos goys.
But yes, absolutely. But all the other administrations were 50, 60 Jews running the administration. I feel like that's a point of tension between him and.
I always talk about this, but I remember there was that tweet that the Biden White House had put out, like in the first 2 days of their administration. They're like, finally an administration or a cabinet that looks like the country of America. And then like the top comment was like, America's 40% Jewish, like. Because it was just so many Jews in that, but it is really usually pretty remarkable. But anyway, I want to go back. I want to ask you more about the Shrand thing. So, okay, so you're surmising that perhaps that the issue, the reason what might have caused Martin Shrand to be assassinated, killed, what have you, is possibly, we're speculating. We're in the land of speculation now, of course,
right?
But it's that he got wind or saw something that gave him the inkling that there was 2 Oswalds. Is that what I'm getting at? Is that what I'm picking up?
Yes. When you and you actually make lists of people who knew Oswald in different places, there's very little overlap. And meaning people who knew him in, Taiwan, the descriptions of him there don't match the descriptions of him, at Atsugi. And there's multiple points of overlap when he should be at Atsugi, when he's not, and he should be in Taiwan when he's not. We have completely separate lists of people who bunked with him in Atsugi, right? Like 2 completely separate lists of 2 different groups of Marines.
As if it's 2 guys.
As if it's 2 guys. And that's the biggest thing. And most Kennedy researchers mock this entire line of research. But the problem is, this is a consistent pattern going from 1945.
I saw a mutual friend of ours mocking you for that take just recently online.
Mr. Dawson?
Yeah.
Of course, because Ryan dropped the ball with all this stuff because he ignored it. He spent all his time on the Jews. And he knows shit about the connection there that I'll never know, probably, because he did all the Numex stuff, and that all connects to Kennedy, right? And so I didn't spend any time on that because I knew it was the Jews. There's no point in digging into the details. We already know, okay? So he did all that, and he completely ignored Oswald's life growing up. He completely ignored all the weird shit. He completely ignored the fact that the photographs of Oswald don't match Oswald. You know what I mean? So he completely ignored all that. He ignored the details surrounding the Tippit shooting. Miraculously, we all came to the same conclusions on the shooters across the board. Tippit, you name it. I mean, we are in agreement on all that stuff. But he just doesn't agree with any of the tradecraft stuff at all. He doesn't believe Oswald was being impersonated. You know, I'm telling you with certainty, Oswald.
You make a really great case, not to like to fucking fan your balls or anything. Honestly, you really do. And then another, just like to put the fine point on it, the purpose, because a lot of people have asked me, like you know, not even like online, but I mean like friends, family, people I've been just giving this whole spiel to is emphasis on spiel. But what's it called? People ask me like, well, what's the purpose of having the two Oswalds? But I think to me, it's pretty clear. They need to have multiple. First of all, you have two operatives, one who can be a fall guy and one who keeps continue on doing shit. Second of all, you can have a guy in the Soviet. So they also need, this is two guys who will have the credentials of having been a Marine.
Right.
And then one of them, they take him and make him a poster boy, sort of like Pat Tillman, by the way, but anti-Pat Tillman, I guess. They'd be like, oh, look at this bastard U.S. Marine who's going to become a Soviet citizen. Can you fucking believe this? That's such a sheep dip, is to be like, oh, look, wow, look at this guy. He's in a newspaper. As Legal Man always says, if something's on TV, or at the time it would have been the newspaper, for more than 30 minutes, it's bullshit. So basically, the idea of like they get these two like people that can just evaporate into nothing, essentially, and impersonate each other, be in two places at once. The same thing we always talk about the tradecraft is like being able to be like have an alibi somewhere and then also be doing something else.
Right.
And some people are born to have this. Like, for instance, Jacob Rubenstein, Jack Ruby, of course, had a twin brother that nobody ever talks about.
Right.
But he's there at the police station being a dumb oaf in order to give an alibi to Jack Ruby, who I believe is on the grassy knoll.
He went to Galveston after the assassination.
Okay.
And we have a silhouette of Jack Ruby, or one of the brothers Ruby, at the Tippit shooting. So now, you know, who knows which one that could have been.
You know, I think I know which photograph you're talking about, and I've spent some time analyzing it, and I haven't seen that.
I think
I'd like to
witness
see it. But
testimony.
I don't know that he would stop by there. There's no reason for him to, but it's right up the road from the Texas Theater, and he was definitely at the Texas Theater when Oswald was arrested at 156. So we know he's there because
something about him shooting Tippit. I think I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, not at all.
I think it was something about him being involved in the shooting of Tippit specifically.
Well, Jack Ruby was there at the Tippit shooting. I was talking like afterwards, like in the follow-up pictures is what I thought you were referring to. Because there's a follow-up picture where you look and there's some very suspicious people and look like in military uniforms there and stuff. It's really strange. I mean, there's some people there that I can't figure out what their deal is who don't belong there. But no, Jack Ruby was involved in David Ferry was involved in the Tippit shooting. David Ferry and Carrie Thornley. So David Ferry leaves from the grassy knoll to behind the book depository. He drives the gray Plymouth owned by Carl Mather over to the Tippit shooting, which is seen parked directly behind Tippit's car and facing the opposite direction. He's seen by three different witnesses: Frank Wright, Doris Holan, and Akila Clemens. And they give a very perfect, they describe the exact same man who was on the knoll and the exact same man who was sitting in the car seen by Velma behind the book depository. Three witnesses.
Coast to Coast AM, right?
Right. Yeah. That's the best phone call in the world. That's my favorite.
Love it.
And so, and she goes, and he stared at me and he had real heavy eyebrows. Fucking duh. Okay.
Who else could it fucking be? Yeah.
Beetlejuice.
They were so distinct because he painted them on, right? And so, but yeah,
Jeffrey Jones. It was just Jeffrey Jones.
It's funny you mentioned him because I was just talking about Transylvania 65000 the other day. I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
Of course, yeah. That science fiction, yeah. That's so fucking.
But Jack Ruby being at Tippit, no, I don't know that he was there. He might have been in the afterward photographs, but he's definitely at the Texas Theater because earlier in the day, Jean Hill sees him. I believe it was Jean Hill. She sees him in the green pickup truck unloading somebody at the knoll. And then later, Jack Ruby is seen inside the theater by a guy named George Applin, and he positively identified him as being in there in the back rows. And then that pickup truck, they don't mention a color, but a pickup truck that was left running in the alley behind the Texas Theater was searched by a cop named Stringfellow. And so once I found out that Jack Ruby was seen in there and a pickup truck left running with no color mentioned was sitting in the alley, it's like, duh, of course it was Jack Ruby in the green pickup truck at the Texas Theater. And then this is the big thing that connects it to Israel, is that as soon as Oswald gets arrested, the
movie that was playing in the theater was produced by Jews.
Well, Jack Ruby, or I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second.
I'm sorry, I did a cheap joke.
So
it would have been the producer.
The first phone call that Jack Ruby makes about Oswald is to Al Gruber, who's in Los Angeles, who's the right-hand man of Mickey Cohen, who's a Jew, who was personal rabbi was Menachem Begin, right? And so Menachem Begin and Yitzhak Shamir, 3 weeks before the assassination, known to be in Los Angeles. And this is a big happy family. You have to understand this. Those guys got together in 46. By 49, Mickey Cohen was doing fundraisers for Menachem Begin. Yeah. Okay. And so we're talking 63 now. This is add 14 years to this, right? So these guys have a rock solid relationship because Jews run the mob, not Italians. Okay. Yeah. And so what do you think the relationship was like then? So 3 weeks before the assassination, Al Gruber goes to meet with Jack Ruby. Okay. Why would he do that? Because obviously he was sent by Begin, and he was sent by Begin because by then Begin had taken over the LA mob pretty much. He was issuing commands, and Mickey Cohen was then reissuing those commands. And that kind of, I'm convinced that in part got Cohen killed because the Jewish takeover of the fucking mob in Los Angeles was near complete. But 3 weeks before the assassination, Al Gruber shows up in Dallas and talks to Jack Ruby. Duh. That's the connection to the LA mob. That's the connection.
And then it's also, it's very, very fitting to me because after all, the goofy ass, what do you call it? His, his insanity plea or whatever he went with Jolly West was, I need to save the Jewish people. That's why I decided to shoot Lee Harvey Oswald. All of the Jews are going to be killed. And it makes sense that you would sort of go to that he would go to that place because he literally had this dude who is like high up in the Israeli like mob slash, like, by the way, Mossad in the mob, where does that begin and where does that end? It doesn't.
Right. It doesn't. Yeah, exactly. If it wasn't for Meyer Lansky, there would be no Israel. It was his drug trafficking that raised the money through the Banque de Crédit International that Israel used in the beginning to form the state. So, I mean, it's a state built on crime and corruption. It's a fucking shell company of a country. It shouldn't exist. And I'm against nukes unless they're used against Israel. So, seriously, every single goddamn one of them should burn in their fucking sleep for what they've been doing to the Palestinians.
It's really crazy, like, especially, and again, you were referring to this earlier. It's interesting because the first time you came on our show, Cory, I believe it was the eve of the anniversary of JFK's assassination. And this time that you've come on, it is not only the day after they lied and said that they were going to release all the JFK papers, but it is, however, the day after the ceasefire was broken by Israel. And the what happened?
We have documents.
Oh, wow, they dropped?
Yeah.
Okay, well, they didn't lie. Is it new, though? That's the question. I know you obviously can't just look it right now and go,
the NARA release date is today.
It's a Rickroll. Don't click it, Cory.
Yeah, don't click it. You're going to get
it's a Rickroll.
You up.
I mean,
this is a momentous day. Wow.
Frankly, yes. Folks, bear with us. We're
kind of getting news cucked, though, because, I mean, like, there's going to be new information potentially by the time this episode comes out. I mean, yeah, let's be honest here. Zion Don's not going to give us anything good, but
it looks like we have 113 pages of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we've got 1,130 records to go through. 1123 it says right here. 1123 records. That better be 80,000 pages. Oh, I thought they found 2,000 documents at fucking FBI. And now we only have 1123 here. So it's obviously not complete. It's never going to be complete unless it has some motherfucking tax records and shit. I really don't care about most of it. Like, they're not going to tell us anything I haven't already figured out. And none of these are organized. I mean, as far as like broken into.
Sure.
None of them were
topics.
broken into like, yeah, exactly.
Why would they make it easy on us? Absolutely. I mean, we'll never see Oswald's parents' tax returns. I think I've heard you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, a quick skim might pull those up, but probably.
No, unfortunately, I'm going to end up wasting like the next couple of weeks of my life going through these, and they're not
And
going
then
to
just
send
getting
them.
angry, by the way, probably at the end of it. A couple other things I want to talk about. What was it? The
We
This really fucking blindsided me. Honestly, I did not expect that to happen while we were on air.
I heard it was going to be tomorrow, but I hear things.
Justin, I've clicked through about 5 or 6 randomly, and I've got some stuff on Helsinki. We got some stuff on David Christ, who was a CIA handler of sorts. I'm just randomly clicking on shit to see if there's anything here.
Yeah.
Is there a picture of the shooter standing in his backyard holding the weapon that he would use to kill the president?
Oh, we do have a David Morales file. I just randomly clicked on one and I got a David Morales file. So maybe they released that because there was a lot of all the David Morales stuff is still being held. We got files on Robert Mayu. Yeah, they'll have one document on Morales that I've seen so far. Yeah, this is looking like it's going to be a lot of the same old stuff, but I won't really know
The
until
new
I actually have
boss.
time to go through it. Let me see, 1,000 documents. I can get through that in like a week, probably.
Yes,
Righteous.
yes.
You're a hero. Okay, I wanted to ask you though about what was it? This really did blindside me, I'm gonna be honest. Patrick, you got anything on the tip of your tongue that you've been wanting to ask while I'm thinking?
Well, going back, I mean, just these, duplicate records.
It was related to that. Go ahead. Sorry, it'll come back to me.
Brother man couldn't even get through a year of school without being, like being arrested for truancy. But then just out of nowhere, I think 53, he had 2 parallel near perfect attendance records at different
Right. So
schools.
there's huge amounts of documents missing because Oswald allegedly gets to New York, lives with John Pick. They're there about a month, and then they get kicked out of there. Well, they don't really get kicked out, but they kind of got kicked out. And so then we have John Pick testifying that he went to their new apartment in Manhattan, but the actual place they went to live was up at like 1455 Sheridan up in the Bronx. And so at the exact same time. And so then from there, they go move into another place and he attends Trinity School, the Trinity Catholic School. But recently, within the past couple of weeks, an associate of mine, Diana Thomas, who's been doing absolutely incredible work on the dual Oswalds, she found one of the people who worked at the Trinity School posted on an internet forum and said, I was there and I can clarify Oswald never showed up at Trinity. Never. But allegedly, we have school records of him being there for like 3 weeks. But the guy who worked there posted on social media or wherever and on this forum, no, he actually worked there at the time and Oswald was never there. So we have more shenanigans going on with New York school records, right? So we have him now. Yeah, and so
Oswald.
we have Oswald in both places, in the Bronx and in Manhattan. And then he's allegedly at PS44 in the Bronx, but Robert Oswald in his book said he went to PS44 in Manhattan and even gave the cross streets because there were multiple PS44s, right? And so then we have him down at Youth House. The Youth House stuff all conflicts. Allegedly, he's arrested April 16th of 53, gets out May 7th. But we've got Dr. Milton Curian basically stated to John Armstrong, he met with Oswald at the Youth House the last Saturday in March. So that's 2 weeks before Oswald was ever allegedly arrested. Then we have other court records showing that he was sentenced to go to Youth House on the 15th, the day before he was actually arrested on the 16th, which doesn't make any sense. And on that form, it says that he was arrested on the 10th and his intake was on the 14th. And so you see what I'm saying? We have all these conflicting records here. And what it means is there's a big batch of school records missing from Oswald at PS44 in New York, from some of the housing stuff in New York. You can tell me that the government didn't know about it? Bullshit. The government knew everything. And I can give you a great example. The day after the assassination, the FBI shows up at the J.R. Michaels company. Oswald literally only worked there for 1 week in 1956. And the FBI goes there and they're like, we need your records on Lee Harvey Oswald. Remember, this is the day after the assassination. Right. Like, we need all your records on Lee Harvey Oswald. They're like, you're crazy. Oswald never worked here. I don't know what you're talking about. They provided They said, check again. And they gave them the dates that he worked there. And they went and looked and found a document showing that he got one paycheck from there. So Hoover personally knew about jobs that Oswald had in the 50s that no one else in the world knew about.
Well, that lines up to me because if I'm not mistaken, that was during the time period in which what's his name? James Jesus Angleton had that arrangement with Hoover specifically. They had this document sharing. I can't remember the name of the program. Maybe Patrick, you remember, but they had a document sharing program in which Angleton had Hoover earmark anything that came through the FBI wires for anything Oswald related. And after Angleton had left, he had like left the office or left the head of counterintelligence office in disgrace for whatever, I can't remember what contrived thing he wanted to retire and drink all day because of. But yeah, they went into his like safe, and there was like a huge stack of papers that just said Lee Harvey Oswald. And this was like 10, 15, and there was years like here in the 1950s that he had documentation had the file on him started before he had assassinated JFK, supposedly.
See, the closest connection I can make is to Fred Korth. He's the highest government official I can connect to the dual Oswald scheme. And so I don't know Fred Korth's relationship with Angleton or how the CIA was managing things, because Fred Korth ended up being like a go-between between the Army. It was a position in the Army. It's not like he wasn't in the Army, but he was like an administrative position, liaison with government or something.
Department of Defense kind of thing.
Something like that. Yeah. Then he becomes the Secretary of the Navy, right? And so, but Fred Korth was good friends with Mary McCarthy, who was the owner of 2220 Thomas Place, a place that Oswald's mother lived at. Fred Korth was also the lawyer for Edwin Ekdahl, who was Marguerite's husband from 45 to 48 or 40, maybe 44 to 48.
Mm-hmm.
So Fred Korth was directly involved with Oswald. Margarite Oswald had made a statement to a friend of hers that Fred Korth is the one who helped facilitate not only his discharge from the Marines, but his getting back from the Soviet Union. So Fred Korth is a person who was intimately involved with Oswald's life going all the way back to, 48 at the latest. And so that's when Oswald was a kid. And so Fred Korth knew Oswald, and Fred Korth knew he had to be in on this scheme.
He had to have, yeah.
And so, but I don't know, I haven't found any direct CIA connections to Margarite Oswald other than the assumed intelligence stuff of the family, which I can't really say is CIA or Office of Naval Intelligence, right? But you're doing shady shit flying around the goddamn world and it doesn't make any sense. And so it's intelligence, right? I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to. So, but yeah, I can't connect Angleton to any of it. I have a strong suspicion he was in Dealey Plaza, but that's just me being paranoid and looking at people's postures. You know what I mean? And so I can't say that with any certainty. Dealey Plaza, they were all there. I have no doubts they were all there. They had to see it for themselves. And also you have, they threw a party that night at Jack Ruby Synagogue. So
it's the happening place.
Yeah.
Jack Ruby also, well, you could also say that it was, what's his name? Zapruder's, Abraham Zapruder's synagogue as well, correct?
Yes, you could. And then you have the connection to Sam Bloom and all those guys, but Ruby knew Sam Bloom, and, the Dallas Citizens Council was a firm.
They're the ones who decided what the route would be. It was like a big drama, and it was in the newspaper and stuff. And
but people say they changed the motorcade route. That's complete nonsense. I've never seen any evidence for that.
They stratified it, I should say.
All I know is that on the 18th of November, Jack Valenti's law firm, or Jack Valenti's ad firm, Weekly and Valenti, released the accurate motorcade route in the papers. So I don't know what the story is about them changing the route. I can't find any evidence for that. So, but yeah, on the 18th,
they chose it though, correct? And then initially, correct?
100%. Yeah. It was supposed to, Kennedy didn't want to speak at the Trade Mart. He wanted to speak at the Women's Building, which was on the other side of town, which would have bypassed
fucking libtard.
Yeah. And that bypass would have bypassed Dealey Plaza. So they couldn't have that. And so when Kennedy's men, who was it? God, I forget which one of Kennedy's guys it was that maybe it was, no, I don't remember who brought it forward to them, but once that happened, Sam Bloom pitched a fit and made sure that it went through Dealey Plaza. So, and he was the owner of the Daltex along with Morris Jaffe, and Zapruder was not an owner. He's rumored to have been, but he wasn't. There was a bunch of
I
Jews in there.
Yeah.
It was
It's
all
funny.
Jewish businesses.
To presume they changed the route is to, to think that they didn't have it planned from the start.
Right.
That's
Right.
hilarious. Yeah.
It doesn't give them enough cred to say that
Come on,
that they had changed it.
Why would
Yeah.
we change the route? It's perfect. Look at the weather.
One of the other questions I wanted to have is, so what do you make of this Zizian thing? So are you familiar with this whole, hang on, it's going to go on YouTube. Fuck. These trans people, trooned out guys who are in like a polyamorous situation, and they're responsible for 3 different murders. And supposedly they're a member, they've like have this loose theology, I guess, that is based around Discordianism.
Oh my God, so stupid.
And but so yeah,
Discordianism.
well, of course, for those not in the know, Discordianism is of course the fake religion that's created by Carrie Thornley, JFK co-conspirator.
So Carrie Thornley, man, he's hilarious. Like I uncovered Carrie Thornley's complete military record, or not the complete record, but the complete duty assignment sheet that marked every place he was. And I also found photographs of him at Keesler Air Force Base, December 1957, graduating from class 24077, where on his actual duty roster, it said that he was in California for retraining. So here's the thing with Carrie Thornley. Like Carrie Thornley was in the Marines with Oswald. He was stationed with him at Santa Ana. So we have to make a clarification. El Toro is the main base there, and 6 miles away is a helicopter base called the Lighter Than Air Station, LATS, which was the secondary mini base. And that's where Harvey Oswald was stationed, while Lee Oswald was working the mess hall at El Toro.
Okay.
But Carrie Thornley is the image that we get of him in Discordianism and all the post-Kennedy stuff. He's like a real sloppy fucking hippie loser guy. But that's not who he was growing up. He was a ultra nerd, really smart science fair winner. And he won a contest in Whittier called the Voice of Democracy contest. Obviously a CIA contest for recruitment.
Right,
So
yeah.
that's where I'm convinced that's where they recruited him in 55, I believe. By 56, he joins the Marines, but he claimed in his testimony to the Warren Commission he was in reserves and didn't really do anything. And
that's a spook thing.
Spook thing. He didn't really do anything, and that he only spent 2 years in the Marines from 58 to 60. But that's total bullshit, because on his actual record, that guy
seen where he went. Yeah,
he went through so much training in those 2 years, and he did do it while he was in high school. Literally spring break, summer break, right after graduation, all that stuff. He ends up going through amphibious assault training for like 6 months. As soon as he's done with amphibious assault training,
isn't he like a little guy? I always pictured him as a little guy.
He's a little guy. He's 5'10", skinny. He's the guy who shot Tippett. But he basically is sent to Biloxi to go through this. He goes through 2 classes there. He goes through basic avionics, electronics, and he goes through the same courses that Oswald went through. Okay. Right. After that, he's sent to Atsugi, Japan. When he gets to Atsugi, Japan, he starts to use an alias of Rick Thornley. He's in Oswald's same unit, and he starts doing nothing but asking people about Thornley. He starts asking people about Oswald. That's what he does, and he's taking pictures and he's documenting the group. And I'm asking myself, why the fuck does he do this? As soon as Oswald leaves the Marines on September the 11th of 59, 2 days later or 3 days later, allegedly Thornley wins an instructor techniques competition and is sent to Washington, D.C. from Atsugi, Japan.
To meet the president.
To do some shit. Who the hell knows? He allegedly, the cover was he won this competition.
Right, yeah.
So he goes to Washington, and then he gets
a breakfast with the president, yeah.
Then he gets back to Atsugi, and then he leaves Atsugi, and he's out of the Marines, and he allegedly goes to Whittier, California for a couple months, but then he shows up in New Orleans in February of 61. Now, to me, that's important, because the alleged incident at Bolton Ford happened at the end of January of 61.
Right. This was the time that he did a test drive of the car and drove like an asshole.
No, that was Seymour. That was
William Seymour. My bad. Yeah.
So, but no, Thornley is now in New Orleans in February of 61. His book, The Idle Warrior on Oswald, is already written complete. He's already got a rewrite by 61. I found an article from 1960 when he just gets back at the end of the year, and he's talking about his book, The Idle Warrior, in 1960.
Why are these people having newspaper articles? I know why, but why? What's the normie reasoning why these people are having articles written about them?
Carrie Thornley has about a dozen articles written on him in the newspaper in Whittier, California, in his early days.
Who is he? Chris Chan? Like, like this is crazy. Like, what? Who gives a shit about this guy? I mean, I know the real reason why, but what is the normie explanation as to why these people are so remarkable in the news at this time?
I don't know. And so another thing about it is that amphibious assault stuff is he actually, when he goes back to Japan after DC, he participates in a large scale invasion training operation, Operation
JFK.
Blue Star. It was called Operation Blue Star, and that he does all the amphibious assault stuff. So he can't really deny that he was an amphibious assault guy because he did it
Yeah.
in training, and he has fucking 6 months of training at AA. He's an AAA man, is what they called it. So
Do you think he was in Bay of Pigs?
I doubt it. No, no, that was what? That was August 61.
I mean, I'm only asking. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. He was too busy in doing his stuff in New Orleans.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
If
But
if
oh
I
yeah. So go ahead,
may,
Patrick. Yeah,
if
go
I
ahead.
may, the question you ask about, why are all these articles? And I think for this, feel free to jump on this if you have any objections, but I think for the same reason that all of these near sightings of Oswald are planned and are
Right.
made to, I hate to use the word, but the idea of Oswald is incepted into people's minds long before they ever even know what they're going to do with him. And when you mentioned earlier, Scott, that whole thing about the two, I think of him as like, hi, I'm LH. No one ever up until
Mhm.
LH evaporates into who knows where in Soviet Russia to await whatever he's needed for. And I think that maybe that book being written on him so early on might be because who they might have turned him into, they might have made a bigger thing out of his defection. If it had better legs. And Cory, I know you've talked about how that was totally set up. The Russians, uh, you know,
They
Soviets
didn't want him.
accepted
Like
him.
so. Like
Yeah,
yeah.
they were like, you sent this guy. We had better
they knew something
expectations
was
here.
up from the minute he got there. Like he couldn't answer questions. He used words they thought he didn't understand. I
Mm.
forget the guy's name who interviewed him at the American embassy, but that guy was like, something's up with this guy, And so the Russians handled him not like a handler from the CIA, but they gave him a job in Minsk and they gave him an apartment that was bugged to the hilt. And he ends up getting that job, but they ended up supplementing his income to the point where the government did. I think it was like 700 rubles a month or something, which was a lot back then.
Righteous.
And so he had his job
Righteous
money
bucks.
coming in, and then he had Soviet money coming in that was supplied by the Soviet government. And so they let him do all kinds of stuff
No
that
wonder he got married so quick.
I think they knew he was an American citizen. They knew he was a spy. And if they did some shit, the American government would be like, fuck you, we want our spy back, or
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Right.
But
Or it
see,
could be like a big news thing with
Mm.
like, remember when the North Korea, remember Bill Clinton went over to North Korea or whatever to get those
I was, th-
girls back or whatever.
I was thinking the same thing. That Warner guy, and later
but I'm putting
on,
off Russia because Russia needs an intense study like I did on the Harvey and Lee stuff. I mean, I did a 5.5 hour video on the Harvey and Lee stuff. And honestly, I cut that short by like an hour because I was getting tired. And so the last couple slides I kind of breezed through when I probably shouldn't have. But Russia needs as much of scrutiny as I gave to that. And so, because
Right.
there's all kinds of shenanigans there. There's pictures that don't match each other. There's all kinds of weird shit going on. You know, the only alternative to all the things that I've put forth is that the entire Oswald shit is a complete and total Truman show. What if he? Because there's some conflicting information on whether that motherfucker even spoke Russian. So
Yeah.
when he gets back from Russia, he talks to Marina in Russian all the time, fluently. He met with
Mhm.
Peter Gregory, who
But
is
then
a
there's that
Russian.
person calling up the embassy in Mexico City.
Yeah, but that was Carrie Thornley, and he had
Yeah,
only
I had
learned
a feeling it
basic.
was that.
He only learned basic Russian just so he could get through that incident. But Oswald, there are people who were from. I haven't gotten to this yet, but I've seen little snippets. There were people who knew him in Russia that said he never spoke Russian when he was in Russia. What's that about? How
That's
the fuck does that
crazy.
work? That is crazy.
Yeah. How do they
So
know what he was talking about?
because they spoke English, there were other Americans there.
Oh.
hmm
Okay. Interesting.
So, and I guess a lot of people speak English in Russia anyway. So, but yeah. So what the
Oh
fuck is
yeah,
up
they
with that?
watch TV
Did
and
he
stuff. At
did he
least with
speak?
the internet age.
Right. Did he speak fluent Russian or did he not speak fluent Russian? Guys in the Marines said that they heard him talk in Russian. He would get up and, pretend like he was on a microphone and speak in Russian to them. And they all thought that he spoke fluent Russian. And so
Right.
I don't understand that. I need to figure that out. That's that. But unfortunately,
Right.
I have so much on my to-do list, and I'm not going to get to that for probably another year or two.
Of course. Yeah, I was wondering, I wanted to pick your brain about this because like layers, there's a spectrum of black pilledness, of course, where it's like I mean, for one thing, we know Putin is definitely a Zionist, so there's definitely a certain
Well, I don't know about that because he fucking hates Israel. So I don't know.
I know he's definitely a thorn in his side, but I mean he projects that he is not against it.
You're correct. He projects that they all need to get along, but
well, that's kind of what I'm asking about. So the reason I'm asking is because like when you see like Oswald going over there and they're giving him all this money and stuff, it's like, how real is the Cold War? Like, how real is what was going on then? How, like, they were letting a spy be there. And I know they bugged out his house and they put and Marina seemingly is like his handler over there, right. Basically, is like a woman who watch over and make sure he doesn't actually look into anything while he's there. Sure. But in the same breath, like how much of like the entire, and then also when you find out this shit about I can't remember the fucking guy, that English spy guy who ended up working for the CIA in some capacity. He was friends with Angleton, and then he ended up being a triple agent or something. I don't know. Stop me if you don't know what I'm talking about. I can't fucking remember. William would know this guy's name. Do you know what I'm talking about, Patrick?
I know. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think
if his name comes up, if his name pops in your head, say it. But either way, the point is like there's a lot of gray area as to who's spying on who. Right. And my point being is, how fucking real is like this Oswald defection in general? Or how much is it the Russians willingly taking over one of these guys so he can do things back when he goes back? I don't know. That's what I'm asking here. Like,
yeah, it's a good question because a lot of their behavior didn't make sense. And when you read their official versions of things, it's like, oh, well, we didn't want to give him citizenship, but we figured we'd give him a job and just see what he did. And like, it just seems so like if all they did was
they just fucking deport him.
Right.
Like
who
Cuba
knows?
did.
Who knows? He had hooked up with some other woman before Marina and she wouldn't marry him. So he got with Marina and like 2 weeks later they were married. So there's some suspicious stuff going on there. But the Russian thing, I'm going to get to eventually. I haven't spent nearly as much time on it because it really is irrelevant to the rest of the story in as far as the Kennedy assassination goes, right? Of
course, yeah.
People need to really differentiate the Kennedy assassination study and the study of Oswald. They're two different stories. They have nothing to do with each other. They just briefly intersect for about a year and a half, So
yeah, to that end, I think it's interesting. It's very plausible that the Oswald entity, we'll call, because it's not one guy, obviously, the Oswald entity, who knows what kind of wet work that bro got up to during the time that he was moving around. I don't, like, who knows? He could have been a mass murderer in Russia, speaking to the fact that we have no idea what happened while he was in Russia. Who knows what he was doing for the Russians while he was there? We have no way of knowing. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but this guy could have been up to any and all kinds of things during all those times where we only have a vague idea of what he was up to. Like, for instance, I bring this up all the time, but like the Patsy version of Oswald went into the day that he went into, he was told obviously to go to the Texas Theater in order to go see that movie and meet up with this pregnant woman. And then afterwards, she said to him, you need to stay and watch the rest of the movie. Obviously, we know it was so he could get arrested for the assassination of Kennedy. But he obviously, that person who was inhabiting the identity Oswald at the time, obviously was there in some sort of spooky capacity, right? So the guy did stuff. The guy, maybe he was just a document passer or something. We don't know. But chances are, I doubt they have a guy who's just a document passer. They're probably having him shoot people with a 22 in the temple.
Yeah.
Kim Philby.
Kim Philby. Thank you. Fucking Kim Philby. Thank you so much. You're familiar with Kim Philby, Cory?
No.
He was like literally had gay sex with James Jesus Angleton. And like they both like ignored their wives together and got shit-faced and probably had gay sex. And he was in the CIA, even though he was a former MI6 guy. And then it turned out the entire time he was working for the CIA and the MI6, he was actually a double agent for the Soviets the whole time. And this was a huge, huge scandal. And the fact of the matter is that even after he was discovered, Angleton never stopped being friends with him, never stopped meeting up with him, and probably shared intelligence with him to the point where he was probably also passing state secrets on to the Soviets.
Yeah, it does really makes you realize that the CIA doesn't work for America and that they have their own international relationships that have nothing to do with us. And
Exactly.
these people are traitors to their country. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when I look at all the shit going on with Trump and the Doge and all the people like against that and stuff, like just like if you were spying for another country, all these people who are trying to impede the president should be locked in a fucking camp. Seriously, like it's truly unfucking believable. I'm a little bit of an authoritarian myself, but an authoritarian who is all for the American way and free speech and guns and all that stuff, right? Which hopefully is the direction we're going. But yeah, I have no sympathy for spies. Period. They should be tried and hung as traitors, preferably on pay-per-view.
Yeah, that would be cool. What was I gonna say? Not for nothing. I mean, there's a famous story that me and William always talk about is that Bill Donovan went to what's his name? Truman, and he said, "Hey, Harry, we have the organization already up and running. Would you like it to be part of the American government, or are we going to do it ourselves?" And Truman had the difficult decision to make. Do I want this organization of criminals to operate under the auspices of the United States government, or am I just going to let them out into the world with no sort of accountability whatsoever? And you can be the judge as to whether he made the right decision as making the CIA an official part of the United States government or not.
Well, the idea that it wouldn't be would be treason instantly. Like,
course,
how are you going to form an international fucking agency with Americans that's doing American intelligence? Like, fuck you. Like, that's seriously, that's bullshit. And you got to think the OSS is the predecessor to the CIA. It's all the same guys who went to CIA. And, you know, you got that gap from 45 to 47, right? That they were apparently no intelligence, meaning that they were all working with the Nazis down in South America. And so when you look at the OSS and you look at what they did, they were basically almost exclusively 90% a propaganda machine. That's all they did. I mean, they're directly responsible for the fake gas chamber stories and all that shit.
The soap and lampshades and stuff.
That all originated with the OSS. Abandoned for many years, and that's a whole nother conversation before it got picked
Frank
back up
was
again.
the reintroduction of the story,
The reintroduction of the story happened in the 60s with Raoul Hilberg's book on the liquidation of European Jewry. That kicked off the Holocaust, and it was like 1964, I think that book came out. So, but yeah, all those fake stories were fabricated by the OSS, you know, so that's their track record. That's what they did. That's what the CIA's major mission is, psychological operations, you know.
Right. And also, I mean, again, I don't know how deep you've gone down this rabbit hole, but the entire phenomenon of very similar to like the Holocaust atrocity porn that it is, and it still persists to this day. It's like the most popular sort of alt media for women nowadays is this true crime shit, which is literally just wet work being described to women in via podcast form, essentially, because serial killers are all fucking assets too.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's really amazing that they've just sort of tentacle-like subsumed the entire, not only the actual doings of American life, but also like our entertainment, which sort of just feeds the human capital back into the actual thing that they're doing in the first place. It's very, very dark.
Yeah, for sure.
Darker, yeah. I mean, Cory, not to, you know, we were in speculation town. Now let's go to
Speculation Village.
And let's go to Intuition Village.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
So, I mean, in all the time you spent on this, you must have come across James Shelby Downard, that whole King Kill 33 thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, it's like 80 pages long. It's hardly an afternoon's worth of reading. But
yeah, I don't really buy that because there was another ritual going on in Daily Plaza that had nothing to do with that. The Purim ritual.
It's Purim, by the way, in a totally unrelated note.
Yeah.
That day, the 22nd, 63.
Well, that was in Daily Plaza.
Today?
It was symbolic. They just have to maintain the religiosity of the ceremony, so not to piss off God. Remember, Judaism's about getting around the word of God.
Yeah,
and that's all they do. The whole Talmud is how to interpret God's laws and then get around them. You know, like the wooden handles that open the doorknobs and shit on Sundays or whatever the fuck, you know. There's the whole Sabbath Goy thing is so stupid. Like, Judaism just drives me up a fucking wall. It's so stupid. These are a bunch of European converts who claim to be from the Middle East, and the whole world buys it. It's fucking it's unbelievable.
Who's more insufferable?
What was I gonna say is
Shabbos
we
Goy,
recently,
good work if you can get it.
I don't think it is very good work, to be honest. I don't think they
mean,
pay, but they're not really a group of people known for paying a lot of money for work. What I was gonna say is we just did semi-recently. I know this is totally a field from what you usually look into, but we read a book called The Jewish World of Alexander Hamilton. Have you ever looked into that before?
No,
Alexander Hamilton, I'm convinced, is Jewish.
Oh yeah, I thought it was pretty well established he was a Jew, and so was Abraham Lincoln. So
Yeah,
I'm
I haven't looked
convinced
into him, but he was a lawyer, so I mean,
that's the whole purpose of the Civil War. I mean, because the
yeah,
South
the
wasn't
railroads,
having
right?
well, from my brief entourage into that, it was like the Civil War was really more about not giving into the North selling out of the country to corporate interest,
Right.
which was
JP
Jews.
Morgan. Yeah,
Right.
JP Morgan, who is, by the way, a Rothschild agent. By the way, he's the Shabbos goy, financial
Right.
Shabbos goy, as it were, of the Rothschilds in America.
They put a
And
curse
his
on
father
his
before
nose.
him, by the way. Sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I stepped all over you just to say they put a curse on his nose.
Well, no, I think gin put a curse on his nose. Gin and cigars, buddy. It's gonna be you in 40 years, pal.
I don't even know where to find gin right now from where I'm sitting. So, but cigars around. Yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. The amount of interests, never mind the interests that had to align for everything. It's just the amount of serendipity and just strange, the way things seem to all fall in line and fulfill the certain requirements of a stage play. Something, yeah, it's it's a crazy thing, especially done all on the fly too. Like I believe they hadn't figured the route until like early '63 in January. They hadn't decided to go to Dallas until then. So
They didn't invite him until Jack Valenti sent the letter inviting him to the Albert Thomas dinner, and I think that was in like
right.
September. And then
And that was because of the Ben Gurion fallout he had, right, with
no,
JFK.
they wanted him to come to Texas, well, for obvious reasons. But the story is that it would mend relationships down there with the South, and
LBJ is part of the Democrats, supposedly.
right, right,
The racist Democrats, as opposed to the libtard Democrats that the JFK's faction represented.
right. So that's why he was down there, because of the invite to the Albert Thomas dinner, which was sent by Jack Valenti. Jack Valenti did everything. Jack Valenti sent the letter to get him there. He set up all the events that Kennedy went to. He handled the press. He did everything. He released the motorcade. Jack Valenti is the star of the show.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, he did also have that little segment of Animaniacs done on him, if you recall that.
I've seen that. Yep.
It's so funny.
Freakazoid.
Shit.
Yeah.
It only fits that he ended up at Warner Brothers. He's a real he's a real.
Well, he was he was a government employee for most of his life as the head of the Motion Picture Association of America, which is sort of his direct reward for having put together the entire JFK assassination. And as Cory aptly put last time in the show, was that the CIA always had a hand in Hollywood, and it goes at least as far back as Jack Valenti being the head of the Motion Picture Association of America. But I mean, this is like a basic bitch leftist talking point, is that. And it's something we sort of dabble with as well, Patrick, is there really ever such thing as an anti-war movie? No, of course not. All of them are funded by the CIA. All of them make war look glorious, and all of them make dying for Israel look very cool.
Yeah. I think that Jack Valenti is the ultimate proof the CIA controls Hollywood. I mean, he was their man in Hollywood for 40 years. So
that's a long job in general. Who gets that?
And
what was the pay for that?
He made over $1 million a year at the end. So, but the funny thing is, he never moved to LA. He ran Motion Picture the Motion Picture Association of America from DC. His office was in DC. He lived in DC. So, what does that tell you?
Sometimes it's easier to just walk across the office than call, you know.
Right.
It's quicker than sending an email. So, oh shit, man. I mean, and it's funny because all this paperwork, you know, it's funny in, you know, your PowerPoint, I see in an interview of what's his face, Thornley, saying, you know, I was in the reserves, I was just farting around, and just right next to it is a snippet of, you know, his, you know, actual time served and the training, the amphibious operation shit, and it's almost like they really did expect everything to just get you know, thrown in the trash. You know, they really. It's ironic that their bureaucracy will be their downfall.
They had no idea that one day there would be a thing called the internet where you could have all of their documents looked at from home. Like they didn't comprehend this. There was no, they didn't think, they couldn't see past the nose on their face, you know, and that's, you know, I'm sure that's a problem we have too. You know what I mean? We can't see what's going to be coming to us in the next 10, 20 years. Right. And I'm sure it'll be life-changing, and I'm sure people will know what kindergarten I went to one day, you know, or as they don't know now. You know what I mean? So I think that their short-sightedness is what really was their downfall, and their arrogance. And they cut corners because they didn't think anyone would find out. They didn't think people would pull documents or any of this stuff, you know. The biggest problem that they had was using Oswald. They could have switched the blame to Buell Frazier at the last minute. 100% they could have set up Buell Frazier. It would have been a much easier case. And then no one would ever have investigated Oswald or any of the Oswald stuff, or have even known about Oswald, really. So why they didn't do that, I don't know. But linking
Oswald
available
that day.
Oh, he was at work that day, so of course he was. I mean, and it would have been better because I have proof he was at work, and I have no evidence Oswald was ever there that day at all. There's none. Every single incident that's supposed to prove Oswald was there falls apart. Starting with Buell Frazier in the morning, giving Oswald a ride to work. Well, the guy who showed up at Oswald's house was wearing a gray, more or less flannel wool looking jacket. But Oswald didn't own a jacket like that, and that jacket was not ever found at the book depository. Allegedly, the next day, some blue jacket was found that I don't know nothing about. Ridiculous. So the person who he took to work that day, if he took anybody, wasn't Oswald. He gets there, Ed Shields is at the warehouse section. He hears somebody call out to Buell Frazier, "Hey, where's your rider?" He goes, "Oh, I dropped him off in front." Well, that contradicts the story about Oswald walking in with the package under his arm, right? So that falls apart. Every single incident where somebody interacted with Oswald that day can be easily explained by William Seymour being there as Oswald. Then you have the incident with the Coke story, which never happened. The story actually occurred on the 3rd or 4th floor in the stairwell. And that man who was stopped, who was positively identified by Chief Curry as the man, as Oswald, was actually wearing a light brown jacket when he was stopped by Baker and Truly on the stairs. And so Oswald, we know, had to go to his place to get his jacket. So once again, a jacket debunks the story. And it's not the gray, more or less flannel wool looking jacket. It's like a light brown jacket, the same one that William Seymour is wearing when he's caught in the Robert Hughes film at about 1 minute and 36 seconds in. So to me, it's clear as day Oswald was never there. William Seymour was impersonating him there. And that makes even more sense when you come to understand the Baker and Truly story didn't happen 90 seconds after the assassination. It happened no less than at 12:38 p.m. on the stairwell. And there was nobody else in the building. And we know this because of the statements of Robert McNeil, who says he made a phone call to his New York news desk from the book depository. When he got the timestamp on it, that call was at 12:36. He said no cops had entered the building by then, and which puts the entire story of Oswald in the lunchroom, you know, it debunks the whole thing. Because immediately after Baker and Truly get done and come down the stairs, the building's flooded with cops. So you're talking 12 to 15 minutes later, not 7 minutes later, right? And so the book depository wasn't even known at first until at least 10 minutes after the shooting. So the idea that the incident happened on the 2nd floor with
why should it? It was only one of 3 places where bullets were coming from. Why should that be the only place where people went to go look?
Right. So, but yeah, every single story about Oswald falls apart. See, and then William Seymour goes down the stairs, exits the building at 12:40, gets into the green Nash Rambler, which I can prove was owned by Lawrence Howard. Then they go to Oak Cliff, where they'll drop off. William Seymour will drop off Lauren Hall and the other guys, Lawrence Howard and Arcacha, at the safe house somewhere in North Oak Cliff that is gone unidentified still. And then he'll go to the Tidy Lady Laundry. Well, he'll be identified as Oswald once again, speaking in Spanish on the phone, presumably to Lawrence Howard. He pulled up in the light green Rambler station wagon that was used in Dealey Plaza, and he left it there, and then he walks off.
Is Lawrence Howard Jewish?
No, he's a Mexican.
I know, but there's lots of... Louis C.K. is Mexican, and he's Jewish.
That's yeah. God, it's like a plague that spreads. Um, anybody can catch it. No, I don't know. As far as I know.
I'm just curious because Howard, I mean, it's the same last name as the fucking Three Stooges. But I'll say this. I have a question though, rather. Who do you believe was the one to cut the power to the elevator?
Oh, that was William Shelley and Billy Lovelady. It was William Shelley for sure. This is provable by Vicky Adams. Vicky Adams comes down the stairs. She tries to get in the elevator and it doesn't work because the power's cut.
Right.
So she takes the stairs down. She goes down the stairs. When she gets to the bottom of the stairs, standing right next to the electric panels, William Shelley and Billy Lovelady, who never in any of their statements mentioned going back into the book depository before going into Dealey Plaza. From there, once the power is back on,
they're employees there, correct?
Yeah, William Shelley was the manager there.
Right. Oh, right. He's a former OSS guy too.
Right. Yes. And Billy Shelley is the one who's photographed in the Alchins photo that everyone tries to say is Oswald, but isn't Oswald. And so they're right there in the front. They kill the power. They go out front. As soon as the shooting happens, they run back in. They turn the power back on. They're seen by Vicky Adams. Vicky Adams then runs out the back door. They go out the front door. They walk into Dealey Plaza. That's caught in the couch film. And then the stories that they both tell are conflict and they don't make any sense. And it's obvious that they had gone back into the book depository based on the statements of Vicky Adams. But that's never brought up by anybody. I don't know why. It's one of the easiest things. It's been out. That information's been out there since the 70s.
Thank you so much. Because that is what whenever someone says to me, "Oh fuck you," it was Oswald, and I watched this long video with this guy with his eyes poking in different directions. Told me that it was really obviously Oswald, and I go every time I just go, how was Oswald both at the third floor or whatever floor it was shooting JFK and also able to turn on and off the elevator in that in like a 5-minute window? How would that be? And that just falls apart right there. That is the perfect way to just the first perfect way to red pill a normie on JFK is how could he do those two things if it was just him?
But see, most people don't know things like the power was cut to the building.
But you can Google it. It's a quick Google away. Though.
Right.
That's the thing, as opposed to so many of the other things that we talk about.
So much of these fine details are what get brushed over. And so, it can appear that Oswald killed Kennedy until you examine everyone's statements and realize that there were multiple other people in that building. And that's another thing. If you got a patsy who works at a building and he's going to kill the president, are you going to let him wander around in the building while you're funneling 3 assassins into the building? No, it's the dumbest story ever. It's almost as dumb as Gas Chamber's story. The idea you'd let your patsy wander the building while you're funneling in assassins to kill the president on the 6th floor. And your patsy happens to be an agent. Him? Exactly. So there's no possibility Oswald was ever there that day. And when you realize that Oswald had been working there for about 3 weeks at that time, you realize it could never have been Oswald because they're not going to switch him on the day of the assassination.
Yeah, they'd see it wasn't him.
Right.
His coworkers would be like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And he goes, "Harvey Lee Oswald," or whatever he would say. Yeah. And you're not Harvey Lee Oswald. I know that guy, and he doesn't look like exactly like you.
Right. Exactly.
4 inches shorter.
So when you look at the roster of employees that was turned over to Dallas police, Harvey Lee Oswald is the name of the person who supposedly lived at 605 Elspeth, which wasn't even a good address either. So even the name on the roster of the book depository was wrong. So, because Oswald never worked there. And I don't buy any statements that said he worked there. Anything that came from Curry or any hearsay from cops about Oswald said this during his interview is bullshit. They're all known liars. We can't believe any single word of it.
Including I was a patsy.
Well, he said that you saw it on camera. That's the difference.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
All the statements that we got from Curry and Curry's notes and all that shit are nonsense. In Curry's notes, someone recently pointed out that it says that Oswald told him he was standing out front with Bill Shelley. No, he wasn't. No, that was not Oswald. That was most certainly Billy Lovelady. So why has he got statements from Billy Lovelady in Oswald's notes? Because Oswald sure as fuck was not there that day. So he's either making it up or mixing it up with Billy Lovelady's notes, which is fucked up too. Because he was arrested and detained and interviewed and then let go that night, Billy Lovelady. They arrested like 20-something people that day. And no one ever talks about that. And all those people got cut loose. Hell, they arrested guys like Angelo Thomas Caston and Jack Todd, who were local Dallas hoodlums who were arrested up by the grassy knoll. That's never talked about. Jim Braden got arrested. Larry Floor got arrested, a.k.a. Ted Shackley. 2 or 3 other teenagers were arrested in Dealey Plaza. Nobody knows their names. So yeah, a lot of people got arrested and then funneled out the back door of the sheriff's office, including the tramps. So
let me ask you a question. You mentioned, I think it's Weisberg. You talked about him earlier. Weisberg. He's the guy who sued, or he got sued by E. Howard Hunt, right?
no, that was Liberty Lobby.
Okay, yeah.
That was Michael Collins Piper and those guys.
Right. No, I know that. I know that. E. Howard Hunt had sued the Spectator magazine, Spectator paper magazine, and wasn't it like the article that had been written was like exposing that E. Howard Hunt was like supposedly the money man for, I guess he was actually the money man now that I'm thinking about it, for the entire thing. But I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm getting it mixed
Well, he
up
was
here,
in
but
E. Howard
I'm
Hunt was
talking about
involved in
the
Mexico
guy who
City.
stalked Bob Dylan. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
He's a guy. He had something to do with the Spectator and that court case in which the discovery led to that drug addict woman who talked about being in the car with E. Howard Hunt and the other guy. You know what I'm talking about? What's that woman's name?
AJ Weberman?
Yes,
Is that the guy? The stalker?
maybe.
A.J.
It's a
Weberman wrote the book on the Oswald Diary.
Okay, it's a guy. The guy is incredibly Jewish sounding. The guy who is stalking Bob Dylan. Anyway, fucking hell. This sucks. I didn't do my due diligence on this. But there's this guy who was a stalker of Bob Dylan apparently, and he was also a JFK assassination researcher, and had something to do with that E. Howard Hunt Spectator lawsuit.
Hmm.
But my point being is that is that guy, the guy who's stalking Bob Dylan, is he possibly some kind of fucking thing too? Like, I
Not that
don't
I'm
know.
aware of.
If I had known the guy, I'll just
I
Google
think
it.
it's
Patrick,
I
do you have
think
another
it's
question?
Weberman. I think it's Weberman. I think it's
Okay.
AJ Weberman. That's what I searched Bob Dylan stalker, and that's the guy that came up first thing.
Yeah,
And
it is
then
this guy. It is
So
this
his
guy.
book on the Oswald Code is an interesting book because he tries to decipher codes that Oswald wrote in his book, which were like half English, half Russian. But he goes off on some tangents that are like, he says that like Frank Fiorini was in Oswald's book, and I'm like, that doesn't say anything like that. They'll have one or two letters, and he'll be like, oh, it must mean this, and so it's kind of hard to use that as any kind of real valid reference for anything. It's got some interesting stuff in it for sure, but
Okay.
that's not one of my main sources.
It is E. Howard Hunt sued Weberman for libel, although he later dropped the suit. So because he wrote a book called Coup d'etat in America, the CIA and the Assassination of JFK. But I just think it's interesting that he also stalked Bob Dylan. I mean, Bob Dylan to me is like one of those guys who was like the Beatles, where they like made him to be like a cultural. He was like gonna be the Joe Rogan of the 1960s, basically, in my opinion. But they ended up going with the Beatles, and they ended up going with John Lennon instead, because I think Bob Dylan was like, no, I'm good because I'm too neurotic and Jewish. Uh, but I think that's a whole fucking rabbit hole we need to go on sometime. Oh, that was something I wanted to bring up too. What do you make of the fact that Ian MacKay's father was a journalist in the JFK what do you call it, a motorcade?
Was he really?
Yeah. He was a
I know
really
shit.
well connected. It was in the White House press pool, and was also another thing is
I never liked that straight edge bullshit anyway.
yeah, it's pretty gay. But here's my take. Here's my take. You'll appreciate this if you're familiar at all with this stuff. I think Ian MacKay was was a money laundering operation to fund all of these bands to sort of change culture in America. This sort of much more nihilistic sort of this the whole I think the whole pardon the pun here. I think the entire hardcore punk movement was a bit fugazi.
I wouldn't say that. I actually grew up. I actually grew up in the early '90s in that scene in Florida. It was mostly death metal in Florida, but I listened to all kinds of hardcore bands, and I met a lot of those guys. And I would beg to differ, especially the New York hardcore stuff. Was punk an artificially created thing? I would say for sure, but that's
Yeah.
where the
Well,
hardcore in New York kind of got away from that.
Henry Rollins is kind of hard to argue against being a fucking some sort of industry plant. His dad is like the head of like some kind of company. He was like the head of some company that like made arms or something, I think. And he went and Henry Rollins, first of all, he's Jewish, by the way. His real name is Garfinkel. But the other thing is he went to American University, which is like the spook college. And in his first band, State of Alert, the drummer was his father was an aide to Nixon or something.
Well, one thing I want to say about the even the Laurel Canyon stuff and the timing of all that, you got to think in 1945, 44, if you were a man in America, you had about an 80% chance of being in the fucking army overseas.
Right.
And so everybody in Kennedy had a military background, every fucking person, right? And so it was not uncommon for people to have military type careers post World War II, just because of the timing and how everybody got pulled into it because of the war. And so every single person you're going to find who was born in the 60s, who went on to even any kind of rock music, or their fathers are most likely involved in military somehow, period. So it's hard to escape. So while I feel there is a connection there, I don't really know what it is. I know that the CIA provided 10,000 hits of LSD for the Grateful Dead in upstate New York at their first big New York shows. So they were definitely part of the acid experiment. But beyond that, it's hard for me to draw any connections to these people and intelligence.
That guy, I want to say something Stanley or Samuel Brand, also Jewish, by the way. He was the lieutenant in Army intelligence and was friends with John Brockman, who, by the way, you're probably familiar with, is like an Epstein partner. He helped create that Edge Foundation, what became the Edge Foundation with John Brockman, and then he went over to he introduced the Grateful Dead to Ken Kesey, and he was in the band. It was a roadie and bass player in the original iteration of the Grateful Dead, which when it was still called the Warlocks, and then later he went on to be a like Silicon Valley tech guy. So this guy is a fucking super spook. Like he had a hand in every little thing, dude. He had a hand in like the Epstein thing and also the hippie movement and also DARPA becoming tech, basically. It's really remarkable that these people, they're just out there. He's still around. He lives in a little shack in fucking Sausalito and he's a like capital B billionaire. And these guys, you can just go and find them and talk to them like feasibly. And I can't believe that it's just so amazing that there's like these guys that just had such a huge impact on culture and real stuff too, like wet work. You know, like the Warlocks is the name of the Grateful Dead, their original band, the Warlocks. It was named after the biker gang, the Warlocks, very commonly known in Philadelphia. By the way, they're the ones who bring heroin or now fentanyl from Mexico into the East Coast seaboard. Like it all connects up. It's fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, it is. It's makes you question everything.
Oh man. Patrick, anything you want to ask Cory?
Oh, well. We got to the big stuff. I don't want to keep you too long because we could go over, forever on this. So, we'll have you back when an eventual next break. I'm sure you'll find something in those.
Well, we want to hear about what's
thousands.
in the Trump kosher JFK stuff.
It's very cool.
I'm hoping that we get some good stuff. I mean, I've seen the list, and the only stuff that popped out on the list was notice there's no Jack Valenti stuff. That's separate. So, the David Morales stuff, the Charles Taurine stuff. What else was there? I can't think of a goddamn thing. And I'm telling you, they have all the previous releases. They've drowned us in stuff about Mexico City and Cuba. It's like fuck Mexico City. Okay, once you realize Oswald never went there, it becomes irrelevant.
Yeah,
all of it. Exactly. There's so many things.
Carrie Thornley.
There's so many things that Kennedy researchers just waste their fucking time on for years at a time. Like the Prayer Man guy, Bart Camp, who wrote that book, Prayer Man. It's literally called Prayer Man, more than just a fuzzy picture. No, it's just a fuzzy picture, you stupid idiot. Like, I swear to God, people, once you realize Oswald wasn't there that day, it changes the whole narrative. And then every Kennedy book that's ever been published becomes irrelevant.
It really speaks to the fact that Thornley goes on to start Discordianism and this whole, which feeds into the bigger lake that we're in now, this exploitative era.
Well, I think he's proof that they were tampering with countercultures for whatever reason.
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. But
And
the whole discourse, to what Patrick, I think, is what he's trying to say here, is that it speaks to a certain type of schizo mind, that it speaks to what would become like this sort of this now counterculture that is being tapped into by these very same Zionist people, are the conspiracy theory. Like we're getting not us, but like our thing is getting fucking co-opted, and we have guys going online to being like, dude, just trust the plan. Trust me. I listen to like what the elites say, and they hate the Jews and like shit like that. And it's just like, guy, I do not believe we're not having this discussion. You can't tell me Zion Dawn is secretly a white nationalist. I refuse to fucking believe it. Now, again, of course, the USAID thing, it was going to be great, but then look, what happens is they fucking ended up funding it anyway in the fucking spending bill. So
see, I don't understand how that works, because it's in a spending bill, but there's no USAID for it to get funneled through. So I don't know what the fuck they're doing. So I don't know where that money's going to go, but it can't go out.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. We're back, and we're better than ever. We're back. And you'll die for Israel.
The world's waking up to Israel, and I don't care what anybody says. Every planet on the fucking country, every country on the planet knows that Israel is scum, and so it's just a matter of time. We just got to hang in there. They're gonna go a step too far. Like their greater Israel, it includes like a third of Saudi Arabia. You think Saudi Arabia is gonna?
Yeah, they're not gonna be happy. Although they're cryptos anyway. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's to a degree. So, or at least they're willing to work with them, which is unfeasible to me. But they'll get theirs eventually. It's inevitable.
Yeah, I don't want to like get into this because I don't know enough about it, but it seems to me like the whole Sunni thing, kind of like a whole fake identity that's created by like Jewish preferenced Western intelligence, essentially. And it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree here, but it seems to me like every time I see like a terrorist group that's doing something that inadvertently, air quotes, helps Israel, like ISIS or something, they're Sunnis. And
all terrorist groups are government groups, all of them. Like,
correct.
Terrorism is a tool of government, period. It's not a tool of the average Joe Schmo who's pissed off at all, ever. Like, I can't think of one incident. Every single one has been organized and people traced back to the CIA. So,
yeah.
The one thing I had banging around in my head while I was going through this material, which, by the way, a warning from history, fantastic read. It's just very well put together and it's a breeze to get through.
Yep.
It's just
I've read
very
it
well
twice.
written. The whole thing about Oswald, what was this dental program? I hear McVeigh anytime people.
I literally was just like, McVeigh? Are we talking about McVeigh or Oswald?
Yeah, man. And just the constant absences, it really, that whole thing. And then the fact that he knew the moment he gets captured isn't passing in front of a camera and knows to scream, "I'm a patsy." It's almost like McVeigh did not know that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
McVeigh did not know that.
Did not know to do that. No one told him.
Well, he wanted to. He was doing his duty by doing that perp walk, by being the fall guy.
Emphasis on duty.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, but do you have a take on the tooth thing, Cory, on Oswald's teeth?
Yeah, Oswald's tooth got knocked out in 1955, in fall semester 55 when he was at Beauregard. It's well documented. Ed Vabel was there. The guy who knocked his tooth out was interviewed by John Armstrong. So yeah, his tooth was knocked out, 100%. It was replaced May 5th, 1957.
Is it possible that there was a bug or something in it?
I don't know.
Were they zapping?
But when all I know is when they dug him up, he didn't have a false tooth. He had two real teeth.
Yeah.
So it's well documented that his tooth was knocked out. And when his autopsy, and that's another thing, all of his arrest records and autopsy records show he was 5'9". Everyone who knew the real Lee Oswald knew he was 5'11". Even his military paperwork on discharge said 5'11". His passport, 1959, said 5'11". Everything after that says 5'9". So
If
Skeptics might say he was just lying to seem a little bit less like a manlet, but
well, when he got into Marines, he was 5'9". We have the photograph showing him against the wall with the measuring height
right,
thing.
okay,
He's
yeah,
5'9" there, and he was only 17. He grew a couple inches while he was in there, and when he gets out, he's 5'11". That's
Hold on.
Oswald. The man who we saw get shot on by Jack Ruby was not the man who was born and raised Lee Harvey Oswald. So,
on that note, I just sorry, just if it can be answered quickly, what would have happened, if Ruby hadn't caught Oswald in that alley?
oh, he'd have gotten Epstein in jail. They couldn't let him live. He knew too
Yeah.
much, or he knew
Then-
too little. He knew that's the thing. He knew too little.
Yeah.
He
Right,
never would have
perfect.
been. They would have found out he was in Fort Worth all morning. Curry already knew about Bo Click. Curry mentions Bo Click in an interview real briefly. And then he tried to say, no, I didn't say Bo Click. I said Oak Cliff. But no, Bo Click was a real guy, worked for the Dallas Transit Company, mentioned in regards to Oswald and as a taxi cab driver who drove Oswald in Fort Worth. But no, I believe he's the taxi cab driver who drove Oswald to the Texas Theater from Fort Worth. So
interesting. Okay, one last question before we get out of here. What do you think? What was the phone call from George H.W. Bush to the FBI field office about actually?
Hey,
I don't know, because he was trying to put blame on this guy named Parrott. But then him and Parrott remained to be friends for years afterwards. So that whole call makes no sense to me.
That's
All's
what that me
fair.
either. I that's how I understood the entire thing to be as well. But that's why I'm asking is because if there's anyone to ask, it's you, obviously.
Yeah. That never seemed to have any real relevance. I mean, was George Bush in Dealey Plaza? He might have been. The known picture that people say is George Bush is not. It's H.H. Davis, who was a detective for the Dallas Police Department. So we don't really have any evidence putting him there. He was in Dallas the night before. We can say that he was at the Dallas Oil Club, Dallas Petroleum Club, giving a speech, and he claimed that he was in Eastern Texas that day at like a Kiwanis Club meeting, but that's false. So yeah, he was there the night before. I'm pretty sure the Redbird Airport incident involved Bush and Barbara Bush. When you read her statements and his statements, they can not only conflict, but her statements talk about flying back and forth from a small airport. So the Redbird Airport incident's the only one that we know about like that. And so, yeah, I mean, involved, yes. Was he a big shot in the CIA back then? No, he was a money guy. He was a rich guy who funded CIA operations for
Right.
them.
The
That's
dad was the real player, right? At the
yeah,
time.
but he wasn't even like an agent. He was more of like a Prescott Bush ran Humble Oil, so he was
Right.
connected to everybody, So
Yeah, he's like a smoky room guy.
he's a smoky room guy for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Cory, awesome to talk to you as always. And obviously, open invitation to come back on, and I will be out in your ass about what the revelations from the Zion Dawn administration are in the next few weeks. I appreciate you again, always coming on. What would you like to promote? Of course, always. A Warning from History, available on Amazon and wherever you can find the books.
My Substack all in World War II is what a big part of my focus now. I'm in between things right now, and I have some things I need to knock out. I'm halfway done with my audiobook. I got a lot of stuff I'm working on. I'm working on a document book to accompany A Warning from History. So I got a ton of shit going on, and I might be moving to Vegas here soon for a project I can't talk about. So
All right. And also, if you're watching this on our Substack right now, just go to our Substack page. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Cory is one of the recommended Substacks from our page. So please do yourself a favor and subscribe to his Substack.
And of course, Cory Hughes Bloody History. Cory Hughes Bloody History is my podcast, so everyone needs to listen to that. But it's some nerd shit. You got to be hardcore if you're going to listen to my podcast.
Can I tell you a little compliment here? We Semi recently did an episode about Otto Skorzeny. And I heavily used your podcast as a source for my information on Skorzeny.
Use Al Borelli. He puts him in Dallas 100%. So
Skorzeny?
Yeah. He was in Dealey Plaza 100%.
No shit.
I have a picture of him in Dealey Plaza.
No shit.
Put it in the thumbnail. We need that in the thumbnail.
Yeah, if you could send me that picture, I would fucking shit.
I'll look for it. It's one of the hundreds of Dealey Plaza.
Of course.
He's the only 6'5" guy with the inset jaw towering over everybody.
Yeah, and the scar. Yeah. Okay, and for us, www.historyhomos.com. That's the RSS feed. We're also available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, Rockfin. And most importantly, our Substack page, historyhomospod.substack.com. If you like the show, you get 100% more show, 2 episodes a week, including this one and the bonus one, low price. And again, it's not like we're going to stop recording here now and be like, bye, Cory, and then go, shit, Patrick, what the fuck are we going to talk about? No, we get a whole episode that we planned out, and it's a great, serious, addition to your History Homos diet if you subscribe to our Substack page. And again, I also want to thank you guys who have subscribed. This has been the best year for History Homos by far since we switched over to Substack. So thanks again for that. And at time of recording, our Telegram group is still the friendliest place on the internet. T.me/historyhomos is the channel. T.me/historyhomos chat is the chat. Get in there and be expected to say a racial slur within the first hour, or I'm going to kick you because we think you're a Nigerian scammer. What else do I want to say? Follow us across social media at historyhomospod. Oh yeah, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you want to buy a t-shirt, email me at historyhomos@gmail.com. Die with dignity. Patrick, what would you like to say to the people before we go?
Back and to the left.
Later, homos.
Drifting back under the moonlight, Harvey whispered, keep it tight. 2 shadows, one face, it's a masquerade. A double life in the dangerous trade. The spy master waits, he's shrouded in dark. That commandant knows it believes it's marked. He gave us our orders, the stakes are high. But together we'll fly and never say die. Harvey and Lee, we're the kings of the sea. Dancing through danger, we can't feel the heat. With secrets to trade and a heart made of steel. 2 bodies, 1 soul, we're Harvey and Lee. I remember the night in the Paris cafe. A flick of the wrist, then we slipped away. A briefcase of secrets, the mission at hand. A double-cross way to move we planned. With each passing moment, the tension's a thrill. Infiltration and chaos, it gives us a chill. We're legends in shadows, we're playing for keeps. While loyalty's fragile, but silence it creeps. Harvey and Lee, we're the kings of the sea. Dancing through danger, we can't feel the heat. With secrets to trade and a heart made of steel. 2 bodies, 1 soul, we're Harvey and Lee. Offers of blackmail, a life set on fire. A flickering candle and we dance on the wire. The walls are closing in but we play our part. What happens in shadows, it's a game of the heart. He's counting bodies, he's counting the cost. Our future's at risk, but we can't feel lost. With every big deception, the stakes climb higher. But with Harvey beside me, I'm never alone. Harvey and Lee, we're the kings of the sea. Dancing through danger, we can't feel the heat. We can't feel the heat. The secrets to trade and a heart made of steel. 2 bodies, 1 soul, we're Harvey and Lee. So here's to the shadows, where legends are born. In the world of the spies, we'll never be torn. With laughter and danger, we'll ride through the night. Together forever in this dangerous flight. Harvey and Lee, we're the stars of the show. In a world full of secrets, we'll always steal the glow.